Okay, now we are live, yeah? So hello guys, I'm here. I'm your teacher today, teaching you about Python, how you can start from scratch, how you can learn Python, basically. And this course is for you if you know nothing about programming languages. If you don't know anything, you can watch this video and we will do this in 3 sessions. So you are not to bombard with you with enough knowledge. So I will try to keep it very light and easy for you guys so you can easily follow me. So basically I'm Muhammad Adeen, and you can see Anwar, can you share the slide please? Okay. So some introduction about me, like most of you know that my name is Muhammad Adeen, and I'm doing PhD from University College Dublin. Basically, my topic of research is advanced modeling of power system analysis and simulation. So what we are doing is we are bringing the power systems on a computer. So we model the power system using the mathematical equations, and then to test the system, we use computers to compute the values of the variables and to give us results based on some input data. In this case, we are using a Python-based software that was built by my professor in charge in UCD. So what you really need to know about Python. This is just a brief overview that I'm going to talk about in today's session. We will try to understand what are variables, how they can be declared, what they use, what are they used for, how you can access a variable, and all these sort of things that you need to know about a variable. We will talk about it. Then we need to know about data types used in Python. So Python uses different types of data, and actually it becomes very handy when you are dealing with Python. You will have a more overview, and when we go ahead and I talk about data types, you will understand more about this topic. Okay, so I will move on forward, I will talk about string operations. So we will know what is a string and what type of operations you can perform on a string. Then we will talk a bit about list operations. Okay, there can be tons of operations that you can do with a string or a list, but we will talk about a few just to give you an idea, like how you can access the string operations and how you can use them in your Python language or in your programming language when you really need them. And then we will talk about a little bit about the functions that are already provided by Python. It won't be in detail for now because we are just starting, and I think we need this for this session. So when we move forward, we will have a better overview and idea of how to do things. So what is a Python variable? Okay, when we are programming a language in computer, you guys already know that the computers, they access data from some memories that we know is so there is a permanent memory that is your hard drive of your computer, and then you have a memory that is temporary. It's called RAM. That the data stored in RAM stays there until your PC is on. As soon as you turn off your PC, there is no data in the RAM. The RAM is cleared, but you can find the data in your hard drive even after you turn off your PC. So in the RAM, there can be different memory allocations for different type of variables. For example, if you can think of it as like a house, you know. So if your house has an address and it will start with the house number, then you will state the name of the building or the name of the area where you're living, then you will state the name of your city, then you have your country. So there is a similar approach used to address memory in hard drive or in your RAM. But there is a slight change that computer doesn't understand words like we do. So computer understands numbers only. So in the computer language, if I say, it will be termed as numbers. So each address will have a number that will be given automatically by your operating system. And to that number, because we are humans, we understand words, we don't understand numbers mostly. So to that number, we can assign a word that only we see on the screen, but on the background, when an instruction goes to your PC, it will understand this. It will try to access your variable using the number that was assigned to that name. So your name is a variable that is pointing towards the memory in your computer or on your RAM, or maybe it can be your hard drive. So you want to store information that is normally termed as data in some space in the memory, let's say in the RAM, and you want to access it using some commands. Now your CPU should be able to understand how to access that data or how to store that data. As a human being, it's easy for us to name. For example, I live in a building named Beacon South Quarter. So for me, it's very easy to understand the names. But for a computer, it's easy to understand the numbers. So a variable is nothing but just a name that points towards the memory location where you have stored the data. So for example, in the memory, I have stored a number or maybe a string that contains my name. So my name is Adin. So I want to store Adin in the memory, and I can name it with a variable that can be anything. For example, I say A. If I say A points towards a memory space where Adin is stored. So I think now that's more easy for you to understand how the memory works in computers. So it's the same idea. So when I want to access the same data that I have stored, I just have to point towards that memory space allocated for that particular data using the variable that I used to store that data. So it will be very easy to understand like this. So we are talking a lot about data. What is data actually? In Python, there can be different types of data that we can deal with. That I will just show you now. So first of all, everybody knows we can have numbers. Those numbers can be integers or floats. And you don't need to be a scientist to understand integer or floats. An integer is just a number that is, it can be a number with a sign, it can be plus or minus, but it's just a whole number like 1, 2, 3 or minus 1, 2, 3. So these are the whole numbers that you use with signs are called integers in computer language. And floats, what are floats? So anything except whole numbers are floats. They are rational numbers. For example, you can say 1.1. So any number, if there is a decimal in it, it becomes a float for a computer to understand it. Then we can have booleans. So booleans are nothing, but they are just true false. So booleans are binary basically. It can be 1 or 0. That's it. And for you, 0 can be false, and if 1, it can be true. It's the same for the computer. Computer understands 0 and 1. For a computer, if I say 0, it means false. So basically, we use booleans to compare and to apply some conditions. You will understand better the booleans when we advance and we use if-else statements. But for now, we will continue. So what are strings? What are strings? Strings are anything that you store in the memory, not in terms of numbers. So, for example, if I say my age is a number, so let's say that I live on the 9th floor. So this is a string that's saying I live on the 9th floor. And I can write the 9 using the number integer. So 9 is an integer. But for Python, that 9 will be a string because I don't specify it to be an integer. So that's how you can input strings using the quotation marks. We will see how to input strings when we move on. And then you can also have lists. So list, I think, is very clear for that. List is just a collection of terms. So it can be anything. In Python, the beauty is that you can collect different data types in one place and call it a list. For example, you can have numbers, integers, you can have floats, and you can have a string, you can have booleans in the same collection of list. And it will become very easy when we move on from programming point of view. What are tuples? So tuples are just pairs. So you can use pairs. What do I mean by pair? Like, for example, you have only 2 data sets. So in a list, you can have an unlimited number of collections of different type of data sets. But in a tuple, you have only 2 types of 2 collections of data. They can be any data types, but they can be only two numbers, 2 integers, 2 floats, 2 booleans, 2 strings, or maybe 1 number, 1 string, 1 number, 1 boolean. So you can make pairs. So and that's simple. And what are dictionaries? So dictionaries are very common to the term variables, because what variables do is they assign the space for a data, and it's just so a variable is just pointing towards the data. What dictionaries do? Dictionaries, you can have a set of or a collection of variables in one place, and you can name each data type or each set of data. Maybe there can be lists in the dictionary, but to point towards that dictionary, you use a name. So it's simple, like as if you have English dictionary where you can have different meaning for the same word. So similarly here in Python, the dictionaries, they can point you towards a list of data or just a number or just a string, but you need to name it. So you are using a name to access data stored in the memory. So when we talk about dictionaries, it will be more clear. So I think we should move on with this, and we should try to learn how to Okay. So now I will try to give you a hands-on experience on how to name variables or how to allocate spaces in the memory using names. So first of all, I will try to tell you how to access Python online. So as a beginner's course, the beauty is that you don't need to install anything. I mean, you don't need a compiler or you don't need an IDE or different things that are used to compile a code. But all you can do is you can go online using any browser that you have. Okay, so now I'm here at Google. All I have to do is I have to type online. So when I go to google.com, I just say online Jupyter notebook. So this is the first link that you can see, jupyter.org. You just open that link. What you do here is that you go to try classic notebook. You click on it. You wait a few seconds. So here we are. So this is a Jupyter-based notebook that is used for programming Python. But I will not suggest it to you for development purposes. But as we are just starting and our purpose is just to learn Python from scratch. So this comes in very handy. It's very light. You just need internet and a browser. And you don't need your PC to be high tech. So for example, when I opened the screen, I saw this page. What I did was like, so you see there are two blocks in it, actually three. So they have some text written on it, just forget about it, don't think. So you come to the last block, then you come to this plus sign, and you will get an empty block. Or if you don't like these blocks, you can even get rid of them. You can click on the block and you can click on the sign. Okay. So how do we name variables? In Python, variable name can start with anything except a number. So for example, if I try to say 1a equals, let's say just a number 1.2, and I click run. So what happens is that it generates an error saying syntax error. So what happened here? What went wrong? The wrong thing was this thing, because I tried to name the variable starting with a number. So now I can try to do the same thing, but I don't start with a number. Let's say I start with an alphabet A, then I can put any number I want. And I put the equal sign. Okay, so in programming language, when I put this equal sign, it means that it's assigning anything that is on the right. So for example, I write a number. So here you can understand that there is a decimal in the number, so it's a float for you. So anything on the right here is assigned to a variable on the left. So you can hit run. Okay, now we don't see any error. So now there has been generated a memory space in the RAM, and that has been named this A12357. And how to access this space? So it's very simple. You can say print, and you can give the number. You can give the variable name, and you run it. So what happened here? It printed out the data stored in that memory. So when I call this print function, what the processor did, it went to the memory where this variable a 123 pointed. It retrieved the data stored there and it printed it on the screen. So that's very simple. Okay, your variables can start with anything. For example, let's say I can say underscore a and equals to, and this time I want to store a string. Let's say I say Python. I run it. Bingo. You don't see any error. So it works, yeah? So all you have to do is say print underscore a. So you see this. So another thing in Python is that the variable names are case sensitive. So for example, I can have the same variable, but I use the uppercase letter A, and I point it towards, let's say, tutorial. So one thing you must have noticed that when I give the string, I use these single quotes. In Python, both works. You can use single quotes or you can use double quotes. Both are considered as a string. So anything you write inside the quotes is a string. So let's say I say tutorial, then I give a space. I say 1.0. This is a tutorial 1.0 that we are doing now. I press enter. I don't need to. So I run this one. And let's say I say print. And to print, I say, first of all, so if I want to print a string instead of the variable name, I mean, instead of the data stored in the variable, I want to print the string. So I can enter this thing in quotes. So I have entered quotes. I have said underscore a and give this. Now, the very good thing in Python is that you can put strings and variables together. So what I have to do is just write this string, then I enter comma, then I say the name of the variable underscore a. And I can do the same thing for the other variable. So now to see the output on the screen, I have to press run. What happened here? So you see, I have same names, but I have used different case letters. So letters are the same, but one is uppercase and one is lowercase. And they both point towards different memory. And they retrieve the data and they print you the data. And the other thing that you can see here, if I give the variable name in quotes, it considered it as a string. It didn't consider it as a variable. It doesn't know if it is a variable or not if you give it in a string. But then after comma, I entered the variable name without a string. So it understood that this is a variable, not a string. So similarly, if you want to, let's say you want to access a variable that doesn't exist, what will happen? So I say print b. Now I run. So you see it says name error. Name b is not defined. What is this? So it means that you are trying to access a memory that doesn't exist. So to define this thing, I can say b equals 20. I run this. Now I come back and I run this. So I get the value stored at the location b. So let's make different variables that contain different data types. For example, b is an integer. So in this Python programming language, the good thing is that you can, if you want, you can make comments. For example, I can make some spaces. I put hash, and then I can make a comment. So everything after hash on the right is a comment. Python will not interpret it. So I can say B contains an integer, and I run it. So there is no error. Everything is fine. So I can use the same thing. I can use variable A. I can make it a float. Let's say 100.001. And here I will say A contains a float. I run this. So for now, you can see two data types, an integer and a float. We talked about many data types. So what can be the third one? It was a Boolean. So I can say C equals true. So when you want to enter a Boolean, it's termed as true or false. You don't need to put quotes here. If I put quotes, let's see, I put a quote here. So now you can see it has changed the color of the word true. So it means now it's a string. It will be considered a string. But I do the same thing, but I remove the quotes. It changed the color. So now is a data type termed as Boolean. So I can put a comment here and say C is a Boolean. I run it. And what was another data type was a string. So I can make a string here. And same here, you can say that D is a string. You can run it. So far you have seen four data types: an integer, a float, a Boolean, a string. What was another data type? So okay, so I will share the screen with you for the slides. So far we have seen numbers, we have seen Booleans, we have seen strings. Now we have to see lists. How can we make lists in Python? And then we need to see tuples also. Okay, so you come back to the screen. So let's say I name the list with letter L. I put the assignment operator, and then I say these brackets, square brackets. And in the square brackets, I have to put the collection of terms to name them as a list. And these terms should be separated with a comma. The good thing is that you can use variables as a collection of terms, or you can give the data itself. You can use different data types as well in a list. So list in Python is just a collection of different data types or the same data type, but having many different elements. So one item of a list is termed as an element in Python. So let's say I say my list style equals 100, and I run it. And then I try to say print my list. So you see, What happened here? It printed the list with the square brackets. So this will tell you that this is a list. This data type is a list. If you see here, when I printed B, there were no square brackets. Even here, when I printed the string, there were no square brackets. So that's how there's one way to understand the data type. So now I can go on increasing the elements of the list. All you have to do is just enter a comma. I like to enter space as well, but it works even if you don't enter it. So let's say I put 1, then I put a float, then I put a string. Let's say then we can put so here I put a space so you can see it works. So let's say then we can put a boolean here, true and even false. I say run. Okay, so now I want to see what did I store in this variable L. Let's say we don't know what is variable L. Is it a list? Is it just a data type? What it is? We don't know. So we will try to print L so we can understand what does it contain. So now I run this. What I see here? I see what was stored in that memory space that was named as L. So you see that these are the content of the list. And this one thing, if you can call it an item of a list or an element of a list. So one element is 100, one element is 1, 13.25, Python is a string. You have true and you have false. So this is an example that a list in Python can be a collection of different data types. Okay, so I talked about that we can enter the list by directly entering the data, or you can convert the list. I mean, you can convert different variables to a list. So let's say here I have another list that I can name as L2. What I need to do here, I have all these variables that already contain the values. What I just need is that I can just give their name like this, B. Then you can put the other variable A, then C, then you have D. I run this. I want to see what's inside. I just say print. There you go. What you see here, at first you entered B, but here it didn't print B, but it printed the value of B, which was 20. And it just did the same with other variables. So you can see at the place of A, you see 100.001. In the place of C, you see true, and D, you see the string. I think that's pretty much basic knowledge about a list, how to make a list in a Python and how to access its contents as a whole. We will talk in detail when we move forward. So what is the next thing that you want to do today? Okay, I will share the slides with you first. So the next slide says is what it says. It says we can learn about string operations. So what kind of operations we can do on strings that already come built in Python. So as you can see here, you can do indexing operation. I will go in detail when I move towards Python. So there are different functions. I just list a few here. You can find a list of functions that you can do with a string. So just to mention a few, you can have all these functions. You can use indexing. You can use this term named as starts with, ends with. split, you can concatenate two strings. It means that you can combine two strings, concatenation. And in Python or in any other programming language, you can even compare strings. Okay, so I will now move back towards Python. So here we already have three strings stored. We have this thing underscore A, underscore capital A, and we have D. We can choose only one string to work on. So the first thing that we want to do is we want to understand what is indexing in Python. How do you index a string? So if I say print D, you can say it printed the string Python tutorial 1.0. What is a string? Is nothing but just a collection of letters. P is one letter, Y is one letter, T is one letter, H is one letter. If you can think of this in analogy with a list, that list is just a collection of different data types. A string is just a collection of different letters. So it means the string, you can identify each letter with a number. Just like it's the same thing as we do when we are addressing a variable. When we try to access a variable, we are pointing towards that location by naming that, by accessing or naming the variable B or D or whatever you name it. Similarly, you can access each letter of a string one by one. What do you need? So in Python, if you want to access a element of a string or a list, all you need to do is put the name of that thing, that variable. You put the square brackets. So let's say I want to access the first letter. I put 1 here and I press run. Okay. So what happened here? Let's say, okay, in Jupyter Notebook, you can do this thing even without typing print statement. But when you are doing real programming and you need to print something, you will need to type a print statement. Otherwise, it won't work. So I think we should go with the print statement, so that we come easily used to these things. So what happened here? I asked it to print the first index of this string, and it printed me Y. But if I see here, Y is at the second position, and I was thinking, okay, the first position is P, so it should give me P. But no, it gave me Y. So the question is, why did it happen? So in any programming language, even in Python, the indexing starts with 0 integer. So one thing to understand is that indexing can only be a positive integer. Or it can be a negative integer. For example, if I put -1 here, what did happen here? It printed the last index or the last element of the string. But so using minus means you can go backwards. So if I say here -3 and I run this, so I get 1. So you can see here, this is -1, this point is -2, then this one is -3. So you can count like this backwards, or you can count forward. I mean here, yeah, this is a string. So you can count backwards or you can count forward. If you count backwards, you have to count from -1, -1, -2, -3, -4. But if you are moving forward, The first index is always 0. You have to start from 0. You cannot start from 1. So this is 0. This should be 1, 2, 3. Okay. You can count on. So I will type here 0 and I say run. So now you get P. So because P is at the 0th index, it's not at the first index. You can access the elements in a range as well. For example, I want to access the first word here. And I know that first word is, let's say, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 6-letter word. What I can do here is I can simply say 0, then I put a colon. It means start from 0, and we have to stop at the 6th position. So I will put here 6. Okay, so why I put here 6? Why not 5? Some people will think. Because if I start from 0, then 6 letters should be at index 5, but I put here 6. In Python, when you're indexing like this with a colon, what it does is it starts from exactly from that number that is here, but it stops at 1 minus this number. So it will stop at 5th. So it will stop at 6th element, but it will be 5 because we start from 0. So I say run. Okay, maybe you cannot understand the difference because there is a space here. So let's say if I remove the space, it was here, yeah. I remove this space, I run this thing, then I again run this thing. So you see now you don't see the letter T because it stopped exactly at the at 5th or at the 6th position, yeah. But index is 5, the position is 6. So this is your 0 index. This is first index, this will be second, third, and so you can count like this. I must delete this thing and I can run this. So this was one way to access a collection of towns in a bigger list. Okay, string and list operations are kind of similar. For this one particularly, you can access the elements of the list using the same principle. So let's say I say that print from list L, and I say print to me first 3 elements. What do I have to do? I say 0 to 3. And I run this. So I get the first 3 elements. And let's say I want to print the elements at position. So this one is 0, 1, 2, 3. So I want to print 4 and 5. So I just simply say start from 4 and go to. So I will say go to 5, but no. Why? Because 5 is the index. But here you have to put the position. So the position of false is 6. So you will say go from 4 to 6. So what will happen inside? It will start counting from 4. It will move to 5. But 5 is, so 6 minus 1 is 5. So it will stop at 5. It will not move towards 6. So in Python, it always counts 1 less the number you put here. So you just say run. So you see it printed true and false. So if I put here 5, what will happen? It will only print true because it stopped at 4. It didn't move to 5. So this is similarity between a list and a string operation, that you can use the same principle to index or to retrieve the elements at particular indexes. But okay, so we come back to strings. Let's say we don't know how many letters a word is composed of, and I want to access the word exactly. What is a word? So, but I know one thing for sure, that to understand the difference between two words, we have to put a space there. So you see, there is a space between these two words, then there's a space between tutorial and 1.0. So Python gives you a very good function that is a built-in function used for string operation. It's called split. You can split your string into different smaller strings, a collection of string that will be a list. So all you have to do is use a different name for the new variable. So let's say I say string s. S is my new string, equals. So my string name is d. I use this function dot. I put here split. And in the split, I know I have to split using space. So I put a space here. I run this. And then I say print s. So what happened here? I see a list. So now I see that the data type of s is a list. It's not a string anymore. So now I see s is a collection of 3 words. So now I know that my original string contained in, it was in D. So my original string contained in D was a collection of 3 words. So let's say you want to, in programming, you want to understand the length of words entered. Let's say a user entered this string, and so when you're running a program, you don't print it, you count it. So this D variable contains a string entered by a user, and you want to know how many words were entered there. All you have to do is use the function length. So I know that so I have already split the string into words, and I want to know how many words are there. So what you do is I say print, or I don't want to print. Let's say I want to store this variable to another memory space. Let's say the variable name is length, and then I give this function, which is Python inbuilt. It's simple. I use this function length, len, just len, and then I give a string. Sorry, the list. I give the list here. I say s. I run this, and then I say print length. So you see, it told me that this thing contains only 3 elements. So you see, this list s has only 3 elements. And this function length works the same for a string. If you want to understand how many elements are there in a string, all you just have to do is, let's say I say ls. Ls means length of the string. I use this function length. Then I provide it with a string. My string is d. So I just say here d. That's it. And then I can say print ls 19. You see? So now you see that this string d is a collection of 19 letters, which also includes spaces. So another thing, very quick. So you can see, you can find some similarities between different data types. For example, you can see in these 2 similarities, how to index a string or how to index a list is the same. The procedure is the same to index a list or index a string. And to understand the length of the string or a list, the procedure is the same. You just use this length function and you will know what happens. And if you want to split a string into words, you just need to use this variable, use this function d.split, and you enter this space or whatever you want to enter. For example, you have a string inside that's this where words are separated using different thing, not space. Let's say I have a string where it says Python dot tutorial dot. Okay, let's use a comma here and say 1.0. Now I know that this is a collection of words separated by a comma, not anymore by a space, a letter, but by a comma. So all I have to do is I say s equals e dot split, then in the quotation marks. So this split, it inputs a string. So I have to give a string. That's why I put quotation marks. And then what do I put here? I put a comma here. Instead of this letter space, now I put a comma because the words are separated with a comma. Sorry. And then I could say print. Here, what will I say print? If I say print s, it will print the list, whole list. But I want to know the length of the list, not the list itself. So what did we do? We use this procedure. We just only call this function length. So you put this thing here like this, length, and you put your variable here, and then you run it. So you see three here and 3 here. So it's the same thing. You just need to know how to split your string using what letter. Okay, so we talked about concatenation of two strings. It's very simple in Python. All you need to do is you can devise a new variable name, or you can do in the same one. For example, I say e equals. So here I have two strings. One string is stored in D, and another string is stored, let's say here, underscore A, and there is a third string here. So all you have to do is put these strings, underscore A and underscore A. How do you combine these strings? How do you make one string from all these strings? You just have to enter this letter, plus, and it works fine. And you can say print E. So now you see, now you have combined 3 strings into one. So, but this string you cannot recognize. What's the difference between the? So where did it added this string? What you can do is you can add spaces here. So what I can do is I can do the same thing, but I can add spaces in between. And then I can say print me this. So now you can see now. So Python tutorial 1.0 was first string, it added a space. Python was second string using this underscore A. Then there is a space, and then tutorial 1.0 was this string. And this operation is the same for a list. If you want to combine 2 or 3 lists, you need to do the same thing. There is nothing else. So let's say LC. LC is a new string list. And how many lists we have already added? So let's see. We have L, we have L2, and also S. So let's start with this. What you need is that L, plus L2 plus S. And then I say print LC. I run this. Now you see you have obtained a list that is a combination of all these lists. And you can even do this print you the length of LC, the combination of the lists. You see now there are 13 elements because you need to add all the elements of all the lists here. So this is another operation that is similar in strings and in lists. Okay, so now I should go towards the closure of my session because it will be too much if I talk too much today. But before going, I will try to introduce another function here that you can use. So you can have different data types in Python, and you can have different data. So you can also compare this data. So how do I know a variable is pointing towards a location that contains a data, and another variable is pointing towards another location and it contains another data? But I want to understand if they have the same contents or not. What do I do in Python? In Python, it's very good. If you want to compare two things or two variables, you just have to use double sign of equal to. So double sign means comparison, and single sign will mean assignment operator. It will mean that you assign the value on the right towards the variable on the left. But so let's say I want to compare two numbers. So here I have B and I have A. We already know that they are not equal, but let's say give it a try. So I will say A to B. That's it. And I can even say print the results. So what happens here is that when I do this, when I run this, it will try to compare the value of A with the value of B, and it will give me a Boolean. So I run it. So you see, I get false. So false is a Boolean. So it tells me that A is not equal to B. So let's say now I try to make B equals to A. So I put B equals to. One thing that you can do is you can just say B equals to A, and it will assign. What it will do is that now B will point towards A. So if I call B, it will go towards the same location as A is assigned. So I say print me B. So you will get the same value. And now you can say print B equals to A. So here now you get true because they contain the same data. So, and if you want to compare strings, the strategy is the same. So we have two strings here, underscore A equals to underscore A. Let's see what happens here. False, because they don't match. You see, the value of small underscore A is just Python, and the value of underscore A with capital letter is tutorial 1.0, so they don't match. So let's say if I say another variable underscore B equals Python, and now I want to compare underscore B with underscore A, sorry, yeah. Okay, so it's still false. Why? Because here I have P with capital letter and Here for the value of underscore, I have p with small letter. So you see, it's even case sensitive. So all I need to do is I need to put the small letter and I get the letter true. So these are some comparisons that you can do with different data types. So, so today what we have learned is uh, is this. So we started with variables, then we learned something about data types, then we learned about string and list operations. But today I tried to cover those operations that are common with string and list. So there are plenty of operations that you can learn at home. You can access the same thing. I mean, you can go on your browser and you can simply access your Jupyter notebook and you can play with it. You can do different things. You can even look for different functions on Python if you want to understand. For example, I go to Google and then I say operations of a list in Python. So I go here. So here you can find different operations that you can perform. For example, here it tells you accessing values. It's the same thing that we have learned today, like how to access the elements of a list. I mean, how to index. So you see, so this is an index, 0 or 1 to 5. So how do you index variables? So then there are some other functions, of course, that we didn't discuss today, but we can discuss later on in the next session, because these functions are not very common to, I mean, they're not very common to the string. So I only discuss those functions that are very common to between string and list. So we will, I hope you guys had a very good tutorial today and you guys really understood what I was trying to make the point here and what I was trying to convey you. So in the next session, we will move on and we will understand further, more in depth, the functions available in Python that we can use to understand and we can use to program our language with our language. Okay, so see you again, and we will post the time and date of the new session. I hope you guys have enjoyed this one and you guys will be interested in the coming session. Have a good time till then. See you. Bye bye.